Hi, I'm Schaffer the Darklord, and today we're going to add 6 new entries to my collection of vintage Kenner Star Wars action figures. Hit it!
They say collect them all and the prize is we collect all 12 of them guys. Collect all 31, collect all 41, collect all 79. It's really 81. Collect them.
Hey nerds, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, please click like and subscribe. And also, please click that bell so you can get notified of future content. At this point, I'm adding new entries to my collection of vintage Kenner Star Wars action figures far faster than I'm adding new episodes to this series. So today, I'm going to attempt to catch up a bit by revealing 6 new acquisitions. But first, I have a display update. Back in episode 3, I put together my display case, but I ran into 2 problems. 1, the star back display card for IG-88 was too tall to fit into the case. Well, I've since ordered a replacement backing card from Etsy seller Star Wars Toy Closet, and this replacement fits perfectly. And 2, I realized that my 4 cases weren't going to be sufficient to contain my entire collection once it's completed. Well, I fixed that problem too, by adding a 5th case. Now I have plenty of space to include all of them without having to double any of them up. I've also added a new decoration to my display. You may have noticed that every time I add a new figure to the collection, I black it out from a 79 card back. Well, I've since purchased an unpunched vintage Kenner 79 card back to hang next to my display as another visual monitor of my progress. This is one of the final card backs released with the Return of the Jedi line. And if you recall, my collection is only focusing on the figures that appeared on card backs for the original trilogy films. These figures are collectively known as the first 79, which is really 81. And just look at it. It features all of the trilogy action figures, plus it features the advertisement for the mail-away Anakin Skywalker figure, the final mail-away figure from the Jedi line. Oh shit. Though Anakin was released as one of the final 15 figures in 1985's Power of the Force line, he was released first as a Return of the Jedi mail-away figure. This means that technically he did appear on an original trilogy card back. And this means that I guess I'm adding another slot to that new case. As for the remaining space in my new 5th case, I have plans for that space, but I'm gonna wait and reveal those plans in a future episode. For now, I'm still chipping away at my original goal of collecting the first 80 figures, which is really 82. So let's take a look at my new acquisitions in this episode's collection update. First, I returned to the Museum of Nostalgia in Astoria, Queens, to look for a birthday gift for my dear friend Nelson Lugo. Nelson is working on his own collection of vintage Kenner figures, but for a different toy line altogether. But while I was there, I discovered that the Museum of Nostalgia had recently added a fresh batch of vintage Kenner Star Wars action figures, and I picked up another beloved rebel for my collection, Admiral Ackbar. We saw this character in Return of the Jedi during the Rebel briefing and the assault on the second Death Star. I've always loved this guy's look, dressed like a 70s dentist with a body like a bright red squid. It wasn't until the 1990s that I learned that in Star Wars canon, Admiral Ackbar's species is known as Mon Calamari. We only see him briefly during the movie, but it's just long enough for him to utter his iconic line that launched a million memes.
Our cruisers can't repel firepower of that magnitude!
I did have this figure as a child, so I was surprised to discover that he wasn't in my 1980 Darth Vader collector's case. Though his accessory, the black Admiral staff that he is never seen holding, was still inside the accessory compartment. Ackbar saw a lot of action during my childhood Star Wars play, and if I recall correctly, he even died in one of my greatest battles and received an epic hero's funeral. As far as I know, he may still be buried in the backyard of my childhood home. Regardless, I'm glad to have him back as he joins my collection as figure number 55. Next, I visited a killer vintage toy store in Chatham, New Jersey called Yester Toys, where I struggled to decide which figure I should pick up. But ultimately, I decided upon Logray Ewok Medicine Man. We also saw this character in Return of the Jedi, during the scenes on the forest moon of Endor. As a respected elder among his tribe, Logray makes a number of important decisions during his brief screen time. First, when the Ewoks decide that C-3PO is their god and that Han, Luke, and Chewie are to be served as the main course of a feast in his honor, the droid pleads with Logray to release his friends, to which the Ewok Medicine Man delivers a dismissive gesture that simply reads, "Nah, we're doing this." Brutal. Later, when 3PO regales the tribe with tales of his space adventures, Logray decides that the droid's rebel friends are now officially members of the Ewok tribe. In action figure form, he looks kind of like an angry kitty cat, with a highly detailed skull headdress and an equally detailed shoulder pouch. He also comes with an elaborate staff accessory that includes a pipe. Though Logray is not the Ewok that we see smoking a pipe during 3PO's storytelling hour, he is one of 2 vintage Kenner Star Wars toys that came with a pipe accessory, along with Jabba the Hutt. This figure is in excellent condition, and I'm proud to add him to the collection as number 56. Shortly after I started posting episodes of this series on social media, an old theater friend named Chris Booth reached out to me. As it turns out, Chris is also a vintage toy collector, and he completed his full run of the vintage Kenner Star Wars action figures during the first year of the pandemic. Chris also makes his own custom mods, and as a result, he has duplicates of many of the figures, some of which were ones that I needed for my own collection. We met up in Manhattan for coffee, where he generously bestowed upon me many of his duplicates. And not only that, but he presented these figures to me in the 1978 Kenner mini action figure collector's case. I had this case as a kid, but I had completely forgotten about it, probably because it got thrown away the minute I received my 1980 Darth Vader collector's case. Inspired by Chris's generosity, I have made a decision. Once I complete my collection, I'm going to gather up all of my duplicates in this same 1978 Kenner case and gift them to somebody else looking to start their own collection. And I'm going to encourage them to do the same. Chris had no idea that he was launching a collector's tradition with this gift, but I intend to make it a thing. Now, like I said, Chris gifted me a number of figures, but I'm only going to reveal 2 of them today, saving the rest for future episodes. And first off, we have Greedo. We met this Rhodian bounty hunter in the Mos Eisley Cantina in A New Hope, when, in search of the bounty Jabba had placed on Han Solo's head, Greedo confronted the smuggler before meeting a grisly demise. And let's talk about that grisly demise, eh? Han shot first has been an oft-repeated phrase among fans ever since 1997, when George Lucas made a controversial tweak to Greedo's death scene in the special edition release of A New Hope. In the original 1977 theatrical release, Han, in true scoundrel fashion, executed Greedo with a single blaster shot beneath the table that was separating them. This is how the scene remained in the 1981 theatrical re-release of the film, when the words Episode 4 A New Hope were added to the original title of simply Star Wars. And this is how the scene remained in every VHS and Laserdisc release of the film throughout the 1980s and 90s. But in 1997, when Lucas made some digital alterations to his original trilogy for their special edition releases, he decided that killing a man in cold blood wasn't very becoming behavior for a beloved hero. So he changed the scene, making it so that now Greedo fires a shot first, which misses Han, who fires a retaliatory shot, killing Greedo. And hence, all of the Han shot first merch was born. But Lucasfilm wasn't done tinkering with this scene just yet. For the DVD release in 2004, the scene was altered again. Greedo still shoots first, but with less time between his and Han's shots, making them almost simultaneous. In 2011, for the Blu-ray release, every shot in this sequence was shortened slightly to make the scene play out even faster. And finally, in 2019 for the Disney Plus release, a shot was added to this sequence, giving Greedo an additional single word of dialogue right before he's killed.
McClunky.
McClunky? What is that? Why? Just why? Though fans continue to find joy in their cries of Han shot first as a catch-all condemnation of all of Lucas's endless tweaks to his films, if you really want to split hairs here, the phrase should not be Han shot first, but instead, only Han shot, as the 1977 original version of this scene remains the most loved by the audience. I had a Greedo action figure as a kid, but I vividly remember cutting his head off with a pair of scissors so that I could recreate this scene in my Creature Cantina playset. Because in my child brain, after seeing this movie in theaters, I somehow remembered that Han had literally blown Greedo's head off. I've always loved this figure's design, even in spite of the fact that he's wearing an outfit that we never saw in the movie. And I am thrilled to have him back as figure number 57. Among the other figures I received from Chris is another fearsome bounty hunter, Zuckuss. We saw this character in Empire Strikes Back for mere seconds as one of the 6 bounty hunters the Empire hires to help track down the Millennium Falcon. Now, we can't really discuss Zuckuss without discussing a figure based on another character from this scene. So I'll just say, I didn't have Zuckuss as a kid, but I will make him right at home as he joins my collection as figure number 58. Thank you so much, Chris. To finish my discussion of Zuckuss, I traveled to a gigantic and overwhelming vintage toy store in Livingston, New Jersey called Hidden Treasures, where I found 4-LOM. Also, one of the aforementioned 6 bounty hunters seen in Empire, 4-LOM 2 appears on screen for a blink and you'll miss it length of time. Zuckuss and 4-LOM will forever be linked to one another, and not just because the longest shot of either of them in Empire features them side by side, but because of a naming error made by Kenner in the creation of these figures in 1982. As I mentioned in a previous episode, sometimes Kenner was given production stills and sketches to sculpt their figures. But sometimes the toy company wasn't even given these characters proper names because they didn't have dialogue and thus weren't listed in the film's credits. And sometimes Kenner had to get creative. Now, Zuckuss did have a name, though his name was originally listed as Zuckuss in an early draft of the script. His name was changed to Zuckuss by the time the novelization of Empire Strikes Back was released. Since this other bounty hunter didn't have a name, Kenner created the name 4-LOM, or 4-LOM, which, as legend has it, was shorthand for the phrase, for the love of money. And with that, Zuckuss and 4-LOM had their names. But they didn't, because somebody at Kenner screwed up. In the novelization, 4-LOM is given no description, but Zuckuss is described as a, quote, human type. And of these 2 characters, one is definitely human-esque, where the other one is clearly a droid. And the name 4-LOM, with its random assortment of letters and numbers, is much more consistent with the naming strategy of droids in the Star Wars universe. R2-D2, R5-D4, IG-88, etc. So it would seem that the name 4-LOM should have been assigned to the robot that Kenner called Zuckuss, and vice versa. Now, whoever made this error can't really be blamed if they were also privy to the production's call sheets. In those, the characters were referred to as Lobster Head and Insect Head, because who could guess which one of these names should be assigned to which one of these faces? Both figures were released in 1982 with these incorrect names. The naming error wasn't caught by anyone until 7 years later in 1989, when West End Games was researching Lucasfilm's photo archives for their book, Galaxy Guide 3, The Empire Strikes Back, and brought the inconsistency to Lucasfilm's attention, at which point the powers that be officially swapped the characters' names in Star Wars canon. But most fans had no idea that this change had been made. That is, until 1997 and 1998, when these 2 figures were released in Hasbro's Power of the Force 2 line with their names swapped from their Kenner releases. This left a lot of toy collectors thinking that they'd stumbled upon a cardback printing error in this new Hasbro line, but they hadn't. These are the official names of the characters Zuckuss and 4-LOM in Star Wars canon, and they have been for the past 36 years, throughout every appearance in every novel and comic book and other piece of Star Wars media. But I just can't do it. To me, the honeybee-looking person will always be 4-LOM, and the droid will always be Zuckuss. Because that is what Kenner told my soft developing brain in 1982. I didn't have this figure as a kid, but I certainly coveted it in my other friends' collections. And also, in my own childhood headcanon, 4-LOM was always a female bounty hunter. Maybe because of the queen bee-like appearance? I don't know. As an adult, I've learned that 4-LOM was played by a female actor named Kathy Monroe. So I'm sticking with my childhood suspicions and will continue using female pronouns in reference to 4-LOM. Canon be damned as I add her to my collection as figure number 59. Oh, and these 2 additions mark a collection milestone, as I have now collected all of the Empire Strikes Back bounty hunters. Look at them. Such glorious scum, so little screen time. And finally, I got another gifted figure from another friend, C. Muldrow in Denver, Colorado. C also saw my social media posts about the series and offered me some of the vintage figures she had in a box. Much like Chris, C also sent me a few figures, but I'm gonna wait and reveal all of them in a future episode. Today, I will reveal only one, C-3PO. We met this Golden Protocol droid where we met this whole universe in the opening scene of the very first Star Wars film, and he's been with us ever since. Quite literally, as he and R2-D2 are the only characters to appear in all 9 of the Star Wars Skywalker saga films. C-3PO is my second favorite character in all of Star Wars, second only to Darth Vader. But as I grow older, the distance between those two rankings grows more and more narrow. As much as I love Vader, I just find 3PO more relatable, because no matter where he is, no matter what he's doing, he is always in over his head. He's not heroic, he's certainly not evil, he's not even neutral. He's just stressed out. And damn, can I relate to that. 3PO's characterization as an anxious everyman is very much by design. When writing Star Wars, Lucas found inspiration in Kurosawa's 1958 film Hidden Fortress, specifically in the characters of Tahe and Madasichi, two bumbling peasants who follow the action throughout the story. They're outside observers to the bigger conflict, like us, the audience. They serve as our companions into this unfamiliar world that they're just trying to survive. Eventually, they do become essential to the plot, and by that point, they've firmly established themselves as the film's comic relief. That's C-3PO and R2-D2 throughout the Star Wars saga. I love C-3PO so much. I love his design. I love Anthony Daniels' performance of him. I love the fact that he uttered the only line in my least favorite saga film, Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, that emotionally devastated me. It's right before he has his memory erased, when Poe asks him, "What are you doing there, 3PO?" And he replies, "Taking one last look, sir, at my friends." I had C-3PO as a child, and though at some point I lost this original version, I do still have the later version with the removable limbs and backpack from my childhood. With tears of joy, I add this original version C-3PO to my collection as figure number 60. Thank you so much, C. Oh, and this too marks a collection milestone. Having this version of C-3PO in my hands means that I have collected all of the so-called first 12 Star Wars action figures for the first time since 1978. Just look at them all reunited. An absolutely iconic array for irresistible Gen X nostalgia. How do you refer to the characters of Zuckuss and Forlom? With the names that Kenner erroneously assigned them in 1982? Or with the names that Lucasfilm corrected them to in Star Wars canon in 1989? Let us know in the comments. By the way, have you not downloaded the theme song to this series, in which I name dropped the first 79 figures?
Imperial Commander Rugna, Yoda, Dengar, Lando, Lobot, Bespin Guard, both black and white, a cloud car and TIE fighter pilot.
Join us again next time as I continue my adventure to collect, restore, complete, and display the first 79 vintage Kenner Star Wars action figures. And if my Tauntaun freezes before I reach the first marker,
It's a trap!
yeah!
79, collect them all in the